What is going on, everybody? I hope you're having a great day today. This is Alex from the Fresh Fantasy Podcast. This is the 32nd episode of Season 3. Today, we're going to be talking about buying or selling training camp hype, talking about guys like Brandon Aiyuk, Travis Etienne, Kyle Phillips, and whether or not we are in or out on what the beat reporters are saying. Joining me today to break this all down is one of the industry greats in this fantasy football world, known as one of the most accurate analysts on the planet. He is also a two-time FSWA award winner and the co-founder at one of the most well-known fantasy football companies in the entire space. With over 165,000 followers, he has established the runs. Adam Levitan, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. And this is my favorite time of year personally when, my teams haven't gone downhill just yet. All the hype is coming out about all the players and just confirming, all the narratives that we've been talking about or choosing not to confirm them if we're not seeing good things. But it's always interesting to break this all down because there are a lot of interesting narratives and there are a lot of interesting things that come out. And I think generally that when we see a constant drumbeat, from certain players throughout camp, I think those are known to be more accurate, but we're seeing a lot of different things. And the person I want to start with is one of the players I'm most excited about this year in Trey Lance. Trey Lance obviously getting a lot of hype right now, but we've heard reports that he's a little bit inconsistent. We've heard the rave reviews. We've heard teammates say that this guy is that dude, his connection with Brandon Aiyuk. Where do you stand on Trey Lance? Do you think this is going to be his year? Or are you a little bit more skeptical about what he's going to be like in fantasy?
Yeah, I think that in today's fantasy, it is not the same as it used to be where you could pick off a late round quarterback and have a ton of success. And so I think that taking one of the quarterbacks that goes in like round 4 through 7 is ideal. If I can do it, I won't force it. But if I miss on that tier of Lamar, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, Mahomes, etc., I'm perfectly fine taking Trey Lance. I think that Trey Lance's floor is so high with his rushing ability and just with coaching, like you see it with Justin Fields. I mean, the way they set him up to succeed is like a total disaster. Kyle Shanahan's not going to let that happen. And so they also have, really good players, obviously, to throw to, and Debo and Aiyuk and Kittle and all those guys. So yeah, I am high on Trey Lance. I'll be taking Trey Lance when I miss on that kind of top tier there for sure.
Agree. Lance and Hurts are the guys that I think are going to be targeting the most in a lot of my drafts. And like you said with Lance, I think Lance could be like literally what Jalen Hurts was last year, just on steroids. And Jalen Reagor and Quez Watkins were top 4 like target getters in the Eagles offense. And then Trey Lance is the top 3 of, Aiyuk, Debo, and Kittle. I don't think it gets much better than that. And like you said, his floor is insanely high. And his ceiling is also insanely high if he happens to be even decent or pretty good as a passer. I think things are pretty interesting. But on that same note, sticking with that same team, what about Brandon Aiyuk? Brandon Aiyuk, we've seen a lot of different sides of Brandon Aiyuk. We've seen good Brandon Aiyuk. We've seen doghouse Brandon Aiyuk. We saw him kind of really start to come into his own and play a lot better, coming down the stretch of last year. And we've heard that he's dominating camp. He approached offseason the right way, just like every other player in the NFL. But are you buying Brandon Aiyuk and his connection with Trey Lance that people keep talking about? Or are you more like Debo's here, Debo's back, Kittle is there, Aiyuk is just never going to be enough of a thing when it comes to those two guys in front of him?
Yeah, I think at their respective ADPs right now, I'd rather have Brandon Aiyuk than Debo Samuel. And it's not really close. I mean, Brandon Aiyuk is, to me, fits with what Trey Lance does better. In other words, pushing the ball deep down the field. I mean, that's not where Debo's game is. Brandon Aiyuk is more that downfield threat, and I think Trey Lance will be more vertical with Trey Lance under center than they were with Jimmy. For this offense as a whole, though, I think they're going to be so run heavy, and that includes Trey Lance design runs, that includes Trey Lance scrambles, that includes all the Eli Mitchell runs and the TDP runs. And so, yeah, I think they're going to be really run heavy. That's my biggest concern, but just straight up for sure, I'd rather go Aiyuk over Debo at their ADPs.
Yeah, I would too, but I don't think I'm necessarily someone that's like Aiyuk is super undervalued right now because if Kittle and Debo stay healthy, I think it's just a hard path for him to really finish high, especially like you said, when they're going to be so run heavy. So if there's an injury, yeah, he's going to be a great value in your fantasy drafts, but I think he's fine where he's going. But I'm not necessarily wouldn't go so far to say as you should be getting him in every single draft, and he's super undervalued right now. But another guy that, will be in a sort of run-heavy offense, and the big question of whether or not he's going to get the work or not is Javonte Williams. We've seen the reports that he's going to get, 80% of the work, 70%. We've seen the 50-50, 55-45. We've seen a lot of different things. And it seems like right now where Twitter is that he's going to get a little bit more than half the work. But, it could be tomorrow that, Melvin Gordon only gets one first team rep and it'll be, draft Javonte Williams, the top 10 running back. So with a second-year player that should be getting better and was already a top 20 running back last year, and Melvin Gordon's a year older, do you see Javonte Williams taking the next step, or do you think Melvin Gordon was just so good last year that he's still going to be taking enough of that work that'll take away from Javonte's ceiling? Where do you stand on all this?
Yeah, I think a trap a lot of people fall into is overrating week one role. Like, in other words, where would you draft Javonte Williams if you knew that it would be 50-50 in week one and week two and week three, and then it would be 60-40 in October, and then it would be 70-30 in November and December? Like, where would you take Javonte Williams then? To me, I would take him in the top 10 then for sure, because if he ever gets that 70-30 mark over Melvin Gordon, I mean, he's just going to absolutely smash. So everybody is worried about Javonte because, in week one, it's going to be 50-50. And you're right. It might be. I still think Javonte is fine in like the mid to late third round. I don't think giving up a ton there. And I think in some home league settings, he'll probably go there. I mean, it's hard, I think, to look past that week one role. But for me on Javonte, I'm trying to lean into the highest upside team that I can. And that's going to take some risk. I don't think that you're going to lose a ton by taking Javonte Williams in round 3. If he ends up 50-50 the whole year with Melvin Gordon, you might lose a little bit, but man, if he ever, completely eclipses Melvin, then yeah, it's a smash. So, I think the beat writer stuff at this time of year should be taken with a big grain of salt. A lot of guys are speculating. Of course, Melvin's working in with the first team right now. Of course, some guys are going to speculate that Javonte is way better. That's just all par for the course. I think just accepting the range of outcomes and thinking more than just week one, I think is where people need to be on Javonte.
Do you think it's within the range of outcomes that like he does something similar to Jonathan Taylor? Not he finishes running back 1 and he's the first pick in 2023 fantasy drafts, but like he's going in the mid-second round. People are once again fading him because of the competition. I know Melvin Gordon is different than Marlon Mack and Nyheim Hines, but just where we're overrating the competition, the offense is improving. He's also going to be a lot better in his second, because Jonathan Taylor was great in his first year. And then what did he do? He got a lot better, as a running back. And could you see Javonte Williams doing the same thing and ending up, in the top 5 of this committee is a little bit overrated?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I do think that as the season moves along, Javonte will separate more and more from Melvin. And for people that are playing in a lot of these tournaments, like on Underdog or whatever, all the money is at the end, so like you want your players to be peaking at the end, not at the beginning. So yeah, the whole week one thing, I'm really not that concerned about on Javonte. I do think it's very possible he's a first round pick next year. No doubt.
Yeah, agree. Interesting to note as well that 9 straight running backs to be the running back 1 overall were under 25. Javonte is one of those few early round guys that are under 25. Doesn't mean he's going to do it, but just something interesting to keep in mind of. Before we move on to Antonio Gibson, I want to talk about a new company called Fantasy Sports Docs. They're doing something no one's ever done before in the fantasy football industry, which is creating affordable 30 for 30 style documentaries for your fantasy football league playoffs. Prices are less than $20 per team in standard 10 or 10 team leagues, but they have a very easy to use video interview platform that only takes 3 to 5 minutes per round for each playoff team. Just imagine for me that it's your year. Trophies and belts don't tell your championship story, but I think his fantasy sports documentary does. Make sure to check them out at fantasysportsdocs.com today. Now back to Antonio Gibson. I think it was you that had a tweet about Antonio Gibson a couple weeks ago about the potential work that he's going to get in an article. And, we heard about the fumbling issues, today in camp, and they drafted Brian Robinson in the 3rd round. And unfortunately for fantasy managers, they brought back JD McKissick. So where do you stand on Antonio Gibson? Because I think everyone would pretty universally agree that his talent is ridiculous. If JD McKissick, Thanos snap poof doesn't exist, his potential is huge this year, but those guys are there. They're going to play a role. Do you think that Gibson can break out of what they're going to do, or do you think that they're going to kind of stick in a committee because they drafted a guy in the 3rd round?
Yeah. It's clear that they don't think Antonio Gibson is like their guy. I mean, they tried to get back JD McKissick after he signed with Buffalo. Yep. He's 3rd round draft capital on Brian Robinson. I mean, they're telling us very clearly what they think of Antonio Gibson. Doesn't really matter what we think. So it's just a tough spot because the way we score points with our fantasy running backs is simply through catches and touchdowns. I mean, all these carries that Antonio Gibson's going to get 1st and 10 from the 25, it's like almost irrelevant. Those carries are worth so little. We need him to be catching passes, getting the ball inside the 5-yard line. And I think the price has come down to a point where maybe I can stomach it, but I doubt it, man. Like, 6th round, I'm definitely out on Antonio Gibson. And I've seen him in the 7th and 8th sometimes. And I think I can stomach it more there just in case things break right for him. But yeah, it's just the way it's setting up right now. I don't think I have any Antonio Gibson so far.
I think the biggest thing that tells us what they're going to do is what you said about like J.D. McKissic literally like signed with Buffalo and they still went go ahead and got him. It's not like J.D. McKissic came back because he had nowhere else to go and no one wanted him. He was literally about to go to a new team and they said, no, like we need you back. We will give you whatever it takes. That to me says what they plan to use Antonio Gibson more than anything. Also note that Gibson only had 1.9 catches a game last year in games where J.D. McKissic played. I mean, that's almost like Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry level bad. So again, we would all love to see Gibson do what he did at the end of last year and get all the work, but I just don't think it happens. And, them drafting Brian Robinson to be their short yardage back near the goal line definitely does not help the Antonio Gibson hype. Another running back that, is in a potential committee, but has a lot of hype around him is someone like Travis Etienne. He's been the star, quote unquote, of Jaguars camp, but there's people also saying that on the depth charts now that they list, James Robinson as the running back 1. He's still coming off an Achilles injury. We don't even know what he's going to look like. But Travis Etienne may not even be the starting running back, but it should get all these pass catching opportunities, also coming off a major foot injury. So what are the tea leaves telling you right now about Travis Etienne?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to mention on Etienne is that it's going to be a big disparity between like sharp leagues and home leagues on Etienne. Like nobody I know from casual guys wants to take ETN. You could probably get him in the 50s or 60s or 40s, but sometimes I see him in some of the sharp stuff going like the late 20s or the early 30s. And you're taking on a lot of risk, I think, there with ETN. However, the way he plays football and where he wins is like how we want our fantasy running backs to win. Catch the ball, score touchdowns, be really explosive, and like think Austin Eckler, DeAndre Swift, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey. These are the actual running backs that I want. Way more scared of the guys like Derrick Henry and, Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon and some of these other guys that are very, very good fantasy plays, but don't have that same archetype, that same role. And so, Travis Etienne is the archetype of a player who can for sure like break a slate in any week because he can go out and catch 7-8 balls and carry the ball 10 or 12 times. And so I like Etienne. I think in the 20s is too rich for him. But man, if he goes into like the 40s, and I think he might in some home league settings, I'll be in on him.
Definitely. Well, I think the other thing Dwayne McFarland tweeted this out, I think last week or the week before, and it was, again, talking about guys that were going earlier in mid to high stakes leagues versus regular ESPN leagues. And Travis Etienne was going 31 spots higher in these high stake leagues than he was in ESPN leagues. It's exactly what you were just saying. And I think that more times than not, these people that are, high stakes players or mid to high stakes players are guys that are usually going to be correct. So is that something that you look at though, when you're looking to draft guys? Like I know that you guys, do a great podcast, but do you look at, FFPC data and other high stakes leagues to see where people are going?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have all the data from all the different sites for ADP, and people don't want to hear it; they just want like a take on a player. But it's all a market, and so there's a guy that I might hate at a certain spot, and I might love at another spot. And so I think that's super important for sure.
Definitely. No, I completely agree. But I'm with you on Travis Etienne. Like I know that there's the whole James Robinson coming back thing, but this guy's still coming off an Achilles injury. And like I don't think we've ever seen someone like immediately come off an Achilles injury and just be awesome. Like it's not like he's coming off 5 months like Cam Akers, but again, not someone I'd rather bet on. I'd rather bet on the pass catching upside of Travis Etienne and what he's going to do. But another guy that's a starter that we've heard mixed things about. I feel like we have our answer, but I don't know how much we should truly trust it for his price right now is the whole Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell debacle. We first saw that one day where everybody knows now that Kenny Gainwell took some first team snaps and Miles Sanders ran with the second team. And that was disaster striking. And Nick Sirianni came out the next day and said, Miles is our guy. But the other thing that, one of their beat reporters reported out yesterday is that this is the most run Miles Sanders has still had with the second team. He is still the guy, but he's having the most run on the second team that he's ever had. That doesn't mean automatically that he can't succeed in fantasy football, But do you think that Miles Sanders at his price right now, which is pretty low, is worth drafting? Or do you think that this is just going to be a headache of a committee through the whole season?
Oh, it's going to be a committee for sure. I mean, there's no doubt they think Kenny Gainwell can play. And I mean, it makes sense. You give Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott first team reps because they're going to play with the first team in the regular season. I don't think it's that crazy at all. I would do the same thing. In fact, even if I didn't plan on, I would get everybody reps with the first team just in case guys in front get hurt. But anyways, the issue with Miles Sanders, I think, is that they've shown a willingness to use other people around the goal line, i.e. Jordan Howard, Jalen Hurts, Gainwell at times, Boston Scott at times. They've also shown, seems like they prefer Kenny Gainwell in passing situations. So you start to get into these spots, like I mentioned with Antonio Gibson, where if he's not really going to get the ball inside the 10 that much, and I think he'll get plenty in there, and he'll certainly score plenty of touchdowns. I think he'll score, 4, 5, 6 rushing touchdowns this year. I think is a fair expectation after 0 last year. But if he's not going to do real damage there and also not going to catch passes, it's really hard for him to have a really good fantasy season. So I don't view Miles Sanders as like an upside pick at all. If I started with some type of like 0 RB build where I didn't have any running backs and it got to me in the 6th round and Miles Sanders was on the board, I would for sure take him in that setup. But if I already have some running backs, I think there's better upside plays around where he goes.
Yeah, and we've seen every year since Carson Wentz was still the QB there that, like, okay, is this the year for Miles Sanders? He's finally going to break out this year. It's finally going to be the year he gets more work. And their offensive line's great. Their offense is great. But it's been like that, for a little bit of time now. And he still has not produced when they were the most like run-heavy team in the entire NFL last year. And he still was not, getting it done. I mean, he had 9 or less carries in half his games last year, which is just sad to see. Again, the talent is obviously there, but I agree with you. He's not just an upside pick because he's going, later rounds could take over. There's other guys that they're using in different roles. And if they're going to be role specific, I don't think they're ever going to give Miles Sanders that work that we would like him to see. But one last guy for the running back position before we move on to wide receivers for the Chiefs is Isaiah Pacheco. I think I could say that wrong, but we've heard that he has shades of Kareem Hunt in him because he's a later round guy that, is producing big in camp. But I think that he's someone that's interesting. While he was a 7th round pick for them, but his only competition is CEH, who was like the worst running back out of all, 3 Chiefs starting running backs at some point last year. But he did have gallbladder surgery. So obviously he's going to come out and be the second coming of Barry Sanders this year. But Jerick McKinnon's there. He's over 30. He's not going to do anything. Ronald Jones has not been getting like almost any work with the top 2 teams. So he might have to beat out, the gallbladder CEH, and that is his path to starting on what should be a still pretty elite offense. So is he someone that you're buying at all? Or do you think this is just our usual, late round running back training camp hype that we're getting?
I think that Pacheco can actually play. His measurables coming out of college were really, really good. He looks like a really explosive player. I think to start the year, they'll have Jerick McKinnon in that role, but Pacheco plays on special teams. So, the Ronald Jones stuff, I know a lot of people laughed at the guy who left Ronald Jones off the final roster. I don't think it's that crazy to think that they'll roll with CEH, McKinnon, and Pacheco at running back. But, if Ronald Jones ends up making the team and CEH is there and McKinnon is there, I think it's hard for Pacheco earlier in the season, but he's certainly someone that I'm watching. I mean, very explosive athlete playing with Patrick Mahomes. Like you don't need to do a lot.
Exactly. And it's not like this is like Darwin Thompson a couple years ago, where his ADP was really starting to creep up. Like his ADP is not, started to creep up. I know we are, one preseason game away from a big run of him rocketing up. But I think right now where he's going for free in your draft, he's definitely someone that's worth like a late round stash. And if he's somehow on your dynasty waiver wire, definitely someone to go grab. But let's move on to wide receivers. I'll start off with one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and Michael Thomas. I mean, he really has not played much in 2 years, but he's gotten nothing but from rave reviews, even from guys like Nick Underhill that have been really on Michael Thomas and what he's going to do. And we've heard so many conflicting reports, but everything coming out is positive. Do you think that we could just walk onto the field and return to old Michael Thomas? Or do you think that, okay, it's been 2 years, he's, we don't know what we're going to see. How do you feel right now where he's going? Because he's creeping up into like the 5th or 6th rounds of drafts, which could be a steal. Or it could be we're all crazy for believing that he was going to come out after 2 years.
Yeah, I don't take any Michael Thomas. I think that when you miss 2 years and you're still maybe not 100%, he started camp out a little bit banged up with the foot still. And so, yeah, even if he's close to 100%, there's other problems too. I think the way his he wins is the way Drew Brees won. Short,
Yeah.
quick hitting passes. That's not the way Jameis Winston wins. You need real accuracy when you have those really small windows like Michael Thomas creates on those outs and the slants. I'd also say they added a lot of competition. I mean, they added Chris Olave, they added Jarvis Landry, and then you also have the Jameis Winston, wants to go deep. It's not where Michael Thomas runs his routes. And so, I get that people are excited about Michael Thomas because he was such an outrageous dominant fantasy player for a few years there. And it was amazing when he was clicking with Drew Brees, but I think that ship has sailed, and I'll definitely be out at a 5th or 6th round ADP.
Yeah, I don't want to be taking that big risk in the 5th or 6th round because that's the same round that I could be drafting Jalen Hurts or someone like that instead. I actually don't hate where he's going. I just think at that point in the draft, I'd rather draft someone like Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jalen Hurts at that point. Like those are the guys that I want in that range. I don't hate his price. I wouldn't say I'm out. There's just a lot of other guys that I'd rather have where he's going. And I think that the range of outcomes where, Michael Thomas, hops off his ferry and magically comes back onto the field and is like a top 5 wide receiver, I just don't see that as super realistic. I think you made a great point, though, about the competition because not only Olave, Jarvis Landry, I think Deontay Hardy is also someone that, made some big plays when he was playing last year, and I think he's interesting. But I agree with you. And again, if Alvin Kamara's situation is not resolved, he's going to command some targets. I think that it's just too narrow of a road that we'd have to walk for Thomas to come out on the other side and magically be, exactly what we were hoping for. Another guy that we have a lot of hope for is Elijah Moore. He was the star of the Jets camp so far. It seems like he's got a great connection with every QB, but my worry is that the QB play could hold him back. And this probably isn't a fair comparison to make, but it reminds me of someone like Terry McLaurin a couple years ago, where I think the talent is absolutely there in every sense of the word. And I want to draft him in every single league. But if Zach Wilson is not that dog that he's shown, over the last couple months, we don't know if Elijah Moore is going to be, able to really break out unless Zach Wilson and him have a good connection. So where do you stand on Zach Wilson and how that's going to affect Elijah Moore for this coming season?
Yeah, I think Zach Wilson was tough to evaluate last year, given the offensive line play, some of the scheme problems. But man, he looked so bad. Good. And so, yeah, it's hard. I would say that if Zach Wilson even looked a little bit better, Elijah Moore would be going way higher. So I think that it's baked in. They've certainly added a lot of competition. I think they actually have a pretty good offensive team now all around, from running backs to wide receivers to tight ends. It's just the quarterback play is the question. So, yeah, I'm fine taking Elijah Moore. I'm certainly not running to take him because of the Zach Wilson concerns. But man, Zach Wilson just has to get a little bit better. And maybe with better offensive line play, which I think they'll have this year, he can do so. So I wouldn't say I'm out on Elijah Moore, but I think he's interesting for DFS at the beginning because no one is going to give Zach Wilson a shot. So definitely something I have my eye on there.
Definitely. That's a great point. I think the thing that I'm having trouble with is his price is fine right now. It's not like he's creeping up into the Allen Robinson right around wide receiver 20. He's still right near the wide receiver 30s right now, which I think is fair, but I just worry about how, unless Zach Wilson's great, I don't think he has a top 12 ceiling. Again, the talent is absolutely there. We saw it all day, every day last year when he was playing, but there is more competition. Like you said, he is going to get better going into his second year, but Zach Wilson's going to be the big question. When it comes to those guys, I'd rather just draft someone that's in a better offense and someone that has a better quarterback overall. Again, I love the talent of Elijah Moore, one of my favorite players in the league. I just don't know whether or not he's going to be able to do it. Someone else that's getting a lot of hype and has the situation to be doing big things is Romeo Doubs for the Packers. He's a 4th round guy, but he's been making plays all over camp. But the thing I think is the most interesting here is that, Aaron Rodgers went out of his way to really praise him the other day. And Aaron Rodgers is not someone that throws around praise often. I know he did the same thing for Allen Lazard, but for someone like Doubs going where he's going right now, it's pretty interesting coming from Aaron Rodgers, and especially when this wide receiver room is so we have no idea what's going to happen. I think there's a lot of big potential here. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is that going back to those mid to high stakes leagues, he's someone that has really climbed in these mid to high stakes leagues later, which means that there's some pretty smart people that seem to be on him. Where do you stand on this whole Romeo Doubs hype train?
Yeah, we actually were really high on Romeo Doubs in the rookie draft process coming out. And shout out to Anthony Miko, who does a lot of our dynasty stuff. His take was we should be bearish on Christian Watson and bullish on Romeo Doubs relative to price. Romeo Doubs was very productive in college, obviously at a small school. I don't see any reason why he can't go out there and win for the Packers right away. The Aaron Rodgers stuff, I don't know. He was probably just like asked about Romeo Doubs and what's he going to say, But yeah, I do think that it's notable that he's been getting a lot of first team reps. I don't think Sammy Watkins can really give you much at this point in his career. We know what Randall Cobb is, and I'm skeptical that Alan Lazard can really handle anything close to being a number one. And so, and Robert Tanya's coming off an ACL. So, Romeo Doubs, I think, has an actual chance, and I've been taking him for sure when he's there in one of my last picks. There's no doubt.
Definitely. And that's the thing is, if you're deciding between, grabbing someone like Alan Lazard, just grab Kadarius Toney instead of Alan Lazard. They're going around a similar price, and then go draft Doubs like later in your draft, right next to Isaiah Pacheco. And those are the guys that you should want. The last guy that I wanted to talk about and touch on that's been getting some first team reps is Kyle Phillips, for the Titans. The team have 67% of their targets last year are gone. It's mostly AJ Brown, but he's running as the slot wide receiver 1. He's been a guy that, like, in terms of consistent drumbeat, like since even before minicamp, he was getting hype on what he's looking like. He's continued to take that into training camp. He's now playing with the first team, and a couple highlight plays of him coming out today. So, is this Titans offense with their starting slot receiver something that is worth buying at the end of your drafts, or do you think we actually could have something here with all the lack of target competition when it's Bobby Trees and Treylon Burks?
Yeah, I can't get into this one. It's really hard for a 5th round rookie in a run heavy offense when you're 5'10", 180 or whatever Kyle Phillips is. It's really hard to have a good fantasy season, and so I don't know. I think that there's plenty of guys that I would take before Kyle Phillips for upside. Definitely Doubs, definitely Jerick McKinnon. And definitely Noah Brown. And like, there's just like so many guys that are available late that I think you don't need to go that deep for Kyle Phillips, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it just depends the league size that you're doing. I don't think he's someone you're ever drafting in 10-team leagues. If you said I want to take him in the last round of your 12-team leagues, like I'm all for it, especially because of the lack of target competition there. But like you said, there's other guys that are more like athletic freaks that are going to be doing big things in the field than him. And the range of outcomes and the path to get there just is not as significant, like you said, especially given his size and his build. But the last question for the podcast that we ask every single guest is our 2022 flag plant, your boldest prediction that we believe in. The floor is yours. Who are you the most in on for this year?
Boldest prediction. I'll go out there. I'll go way out there. I will say that Juju Smith-Schuster will lead the NFL in receptions. So I think that Juju has been written off because he was hurt and because Ben Roethlisberger literally couldn't play at all. He's still really young, and it was not that long ago Juju Smith-Schuster was like everybody's number one dynasty player. Now he goes to Kansas City, where I'm not sold on MVS being any type of load-bearing wideout. I do like Sky Moore. I think we know what we have in Mecole Hardman at this point. And so, everybody assumes Patrick Mahomes is going to have a great year again. Travis Kelce's 33 years old. How is he going to do it? I think a lot of it's going to go through the slot, where Patrick Mahomes already has a really high target rate to the slot. And so, I think Juju catching 100, 110 balls would not be the craziest thing in the history of the world. And so I'll go with that one. Juju to lead the NFL in receptions.
What do you say to the people that are saying Juju's washed? Deontay Johnson was, producing with Ben Roethlisberger. There's no way Juju has it. What do you say to those people?
Yeah. Juju's washed. He's 25 years old. I think I think that there's definitely some merit that Juju was outplayed by Deontay and targets per route run and all that. But man, I think going to play with Patrick Mahomes is all bets are off, I think, going forward.
Definitely. I totally like that bold take. The only thing with Juju is I know in reception perception, Matt Harmon, not the greatest player getting open, but what is he good at? He's getting good at when he's getting schemed open. And I don't think there's any place that he could go to in the NFL that is perfect for scheming him open and playing exactly to the strengths that he has, even though he's fallen off a cliff at 25, than Juju. So I like that take. I think that's super respectable. Before we get out of here, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, buying and selling some training camp news with you. But before we go, you're doing a lot of great things at Establish the Run. So please tell the people where they can find them, where they can find you, and anything else that you want to plug.
Yeah, we just, I would recommend anyone who hasn't checked us out, check out the free podcast we do. You can just find it anywhere podcasts are found. Establish the Run podcast is free, and you can see what we're all about there and take it from there.
Absolutely. But it's a pleasure having you on the show. It's been a pleasure with you listeners listening along today, talking fantasy football all year round. This August is the best time to do it. Because as always, you guys already know, please leave a review. You guys already know what to do. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.